Peace and salams. This video is a response to another video entitled 43 Scientific Mistakes in the Quran. And so if you haven't yet seen that video, pause this and watch that one first. Quick disclaimer, this video is only for the purpose of debate. It is not to diss him or take shots at this guy in any way, but just to show why I disagree with him in his saying there are scientific mistakes in the Quran. Also, in response to some of the things he said in the beginning of his video, the truth is, Islam is in no way immoral or something that reduces human dignity, nor is Islam against the rights of freedom, and we don't believe that the Quran is supposed to cancel out any scientific observations. The truth is very much the opposite of such typical anti-Islamic claims. Islam is really all about science, and in this video I'm going to be using the Maulana Muhammad Ali and the Abdullah Yusuf Ali English translations of the Quran. Also note that in his video he did not give the English translations he is using. I don't really know what English translations he's going by, but let's get right into it. Let's take a look at every verse that he mentioned in his video called 43 Scientific Mistakes in the Quran. Alright, number 1, Quran says, of everything Allah created pairs. In chapter 51 verse 49, which says, and of everything we have created pairs that you may be mindful. Now, as you can clearly see, this verse does not say that all animals mate by pairs, as he is trying to claim the verse is saying. It doesn't even say that at all. I don't know where he's getting that from. Nowhere in this verse or in the Quran anywhere does it say that all animals mate by pairs. That is false. The word mate is not even there in the verse. On the contrary, this verse actually contains great wisdom that he is missing out on in his alteration of the verse by adding the word mate to it. Because duality is a universal reality. There is great wisdom in this verse because when the Big Bang occurred, when the universe began, the photon matter and antimatter came together and formed the world and anti-world. Discoveries dating back to ancient times found that pairs is a universal thing. No one can refute that solid matter has a pair. Paul Dirac claimed that there was a possibility of particles existing alongside those of matter, and Professor Kevin Anderson, studying cosmic rays in 1932, discovered that there were other particles with an opposite electric charge, which are anti-electrons. All particles exist in the form of pair particles, which are particles and antiparticles, atoms and anti-atoms, matter and antimatter. If this world is made up of matter, then according to the law of opposites, there has to be another world made up of antimatter. This theory was investigated by physicist Oscar Klein and astrophysicist Hans Alvin. The theory was also backed up by mathematician Dr. Gustav Nahn, who concluded that although the anti-world cannot be explained by theories and the laws of physics, the anti-world exists on its own and parallel to this world. In our world today, all antiparticles are in an unstable state, but they will be stable in the anti-world. The nuclei of atoms have a positive electric charge, while electrons are negatively charged. And this is not disproven. No one can disprove this. Everything in the universe exists in pairs, such as male and female. We find rock crystals have pairs. Pairs are throughout nature. There's day and night, positive and negative electricity, forces of attraction and repulsion, and numerous other opposites, each fulfilling its purpose and contributing to the working of the universe. And in the moral and spiritual world, the law of opposites, we have love and aversion, mercy and justice, striving and rest, war and peace, a time to plant, a time to reap, and so on. Computer language is written in codes of ones and zeros, positive and negative, just like good and bad. Positive charge and negative charge coming together. You can't have one without the other. Everything has its counterpart or pair or complement. Fire is the counterpart to water. Earth is the counterpart to air. This is easily explainable. No one can disprove this. This verse is no scientific mistake, and this verse, chapter 51, verse 49, is also not related to chapter 6, verse 38, in the way that he is trying to say it is in his point number 2, where he's trying to draw a false connection between these two verses, 51:49 and 6:38, which brings us to number 2, chapter 6, verse 38 of the Quran, which says, and there is no animal in the earth nor a bird that flies on its 2 wings, but they are communities like yourselves. And the animals are communities like us. I disagree that this is a scientific mistake to say that animals are communities like us. Because, of course, there are significant differences between animal communities and people communities, but they still hold some things in common. Therefore, they're still alike in a certain sense. I mean, if you want to get that technical in saying that animals are not communities like people, then at the same token, you could also say that Chinese communities are nothing like German communities, which would be incorrect from a certain perspective of looking at it. I mean, sure, Chinese culture is very different from German culture, but they're still alike in that they have some things in common as people. I mean, every animal community also holds some things in common with people communities. This is not a scientific mistake. This verse does not say that all animals have societies like he is trying to say the verse says. It does not say that. The difference between society and community is that a society is built upon interactions with various individuals, whereas a community is a collection of individuals with similar interests. So, yes, all living things do have a community, but not necessarily a society. Nice try. Number 3. Okay, so number 3 is a good one, and I'm glad he mentions this because I'll be doing a video on this very topic soon, actually. All right, so chapter 3, verse 59 says, "The likeness of Isa, Jesus, with Allah is truly as the likeness of Adam. He created him from dust. Then he said to him, 'Be,' and he was." And not only is the Quran speaking in terms of allegorical symbolism, but we are actually made of the dust of the universe. Okay, we're not talking about the kind of dust that is pocket lint or the kind of dust that gathers on wooden furniture that has not been polished in a while. No, we're not talking about that kind of dust. We're talking about star dust, what our galaxy is made of. It's important to understand that there is esoteric symbolism in the word dust. It's not a scientific mistake, it's allegorical poetry. But see, the strategy that this guy uses is that he bypasses any esoteric meaning behind the words, and he refers to the Quranic verses in terms of elementary definition at literal face value interpretation, and then he says, "See? Scientific mistake. I'm not made of dust. We're not made of pocket lint. I'm not made of the stuff that gathers on a piano that hasn't been polished or wiped down in a while." And that's not what it's referring to. Also, might I add that dust that gathers in your house when you haven't cleaned in a while is usually partly composed of shredded dead skin cells, which is your body, in a sense. And then in this verse, chapter 15, verse 26, where it says, "And surely we created man of sounding clay, of black mud fashioned into shape," is actually explained by the messenger, who actually tells us that the sounding clay, the black mud mentioned in these verses, is symbolic. The messenger said that the essence of black mud mentioned is only symbolic, which actually means the sperm of the original man. Okay, so that's what black clay means. It's symbolic. It doesn't mean literal clay like what potters use to make vessels or something like that. The black clay is an allegorical reference to the sperm of the original man. And I can show the source where the messenger actually said this, and I don't think that saying that we come from sperm is a scientific mistake, but that's me. Number 4, chapter 16, verse 66 says, "And surely there is a lesson for you in the cattle. We give you to drink of what is in their bellies, from between the feces and the blood, pure milk, agreeable to the drinkers," which I don't agree is scientifically disproven because the verse does not actually say that milk is physically stored in or that milk originates at a place within the cow's body located between where feces and blood are. It does not say that. What it says is from between the feces and the blood, pure milk, agreeable to its drinkers. And the word between here in this verse is not a reference to any physical location in the cow's body, like I was saying. Rather, it is referring to a process described as between two other processes, because the other two processes that its process is in the midst of are opposites of each other. In this sense of looking at it, feces and blood are opposites of each other because everything you eat either goes to the body, the blood, or is turned to feces, one or the other. Blood or feces, opposites, right? Everything you eat either goes to blood or goes to waste. And so the Quran is telling us that with cows, there is milk that comes from between that process of the cow's body separating what is needed for blood and what gets wasted out as feces. Okay, so everything the cow eats is turned into one of those three things. Everything the cow eats, all that grass the cow chews and swallows, either becomes blood or becomes milk or becomes feces. Okay, so between the process, we are given milk from the nutrients of what it eats. The Quran is describing the assimilation of nutrition out of the fodder, which goes to blood, whereas what is left out goes to excretion. And the milk is got out from between these two processes. So, between excretion and the blood refers to the process of the formation of milk. To produce milk, cows need to eat a variety of grasses, clover and bulky fodder, plus food that's rich in protein and energy. And so it is figurative, meaning the process of stuff from food becoming milk being between the two other processes of what the cow's body does with what it eats. This is not a scientific mistake. This verse does not say that milk comes from some physical place located between blood and feces. Also, this verse says agreeable to the drinkers and agreeable to those who drink it in the Yusuf Ali translation, obviously excluding lactose intolerant people, which refutes his false claim that it is saying milk is agreeable to all people. It does not say that. This verse does not imply in any way that no one is lactose intolerant like he is trying to say that it says. Also, the Quran is speaking in relevance to the time in which it is being revealed. It says the milk for them it means is pure. The word pure has different implications. Look up the word. It does not mean that it is saying that there is no bacteria in cow's milk. It does not say that at all. Moving along. Number 5, chapter 16, verse 8, the Quran says horses were created for our transportation. And his weak argument that horses are not animals that were originally born into domestication does not in any way disprove the notion that they were divinely created for our usage. In Islam, we believe in predestination, that everything is meant to be. So, although horses were not originally domesticated, they apparently had a destiny to be where they are now, in a state of domestication. Moving along. Number 6, chapter 6, verse 142 to 144 does not say or indicate as he is trying to claim that there are only 8 kinds of cattle in all of worldly existence. It does not say that. Chapter 6, verse 142 to 144 is obviously referring to the 8 types of cattle that Allah had blessed them with at that place and at that time, 7th century Arabia. Just as much of what is in the Quran pertains to the time in which it is being revealed. But I think he is trying to twist it to fit his claim that the Quran is not scientific. Like how he says, I guess Allah's knowledge was limited to only animals in Arabia. No. Number 7, chapter 13, verse 13 is speaking allegorically regarding the thunder. It does not say that lightning is a punishment to smite humans. Claiming that the Quran says that is false. It does not say that. The Quran is divine poetry. Let's look at the words of the verse. It says, He flings the loud-voiced thunder, and therewith he striketh whomsoever he will. This is referring to receiving Allah's divine guidance, as many of us have. The verse doesn't say anything about punishment. Much of what is in the Quran is allegorical, and the Quran tells you that itself, that much of it is allegorical in nature. Number 8, chapter 14, verse 32, and chapter 17, verse 66 says, He who has made the ships subject to you, that they may sail through the sea by his command, or Your Lord is he that makes the ships go smoothly for you through the sea, in order that ye may seek of his bounty, for he is unto you most merciful. And since we believe Allah is the driving force behind all things, I don't see how this verse fails to make scientific sense. From a theological perspective, it is simply saying Allah is he who gets you safely from your starting point to your destination. This is a theological concept, not a scientific mistake. Number 9, chapter 81, verse 2 says, When the stars fall, losing their luster. And in another translation, it says, When the stars are dust-colored. So already we're seeing different English translations of these verses. And this can have multiple meanings, especially on an allegorical level. And who can scientifically prove that stars don't fall, or that stars are not falling right now as we speak? I mean, of course stars do not fall down to the surface of the earth like raindrops, like some kind of cartoon-like depiction. That is not what the Quran says. The Quran does not even imply anything like that at all. But see how he's all like, how do they fall? Like, come on. Seriously, this is not a scientific mistake. And nowhere does the Quran say that stars are little specks of light in the sky like he is trying to say. It's also important to understand that a lack of evidence does not disprove something. Can you disprove that stars fall? I don't think so. Number 10, chapter 67, verse 5 does not say that the stars are only just little adornments hanging above to make things look beautiful. This verse does not even say that at all. Number 11, chapter 37, verse 6 says, "Surely we have adorned the lower heaven with an adornment, the stars." This does not imply in any way that stars are right by us near our stratosphere. Lower heaven does not mean right next to our atmosphere. But look, see what he's trying to do? See how he's trying to discredit the Quran? It's obvious. Number 12, chapter 67, verse 5 says, "And certainly we have adorned this lower heaven with lamps, stars, and we make them a means of conjecture for the devils, and we have prepared for them the chastisement of burning." That is what chapter 67, verse 5 says. It doesn't say anything about missiles. Furthermore, why would he be trying to claim that a book from 7th century Arabia is talking about missiles when this verse is not? Moving along. Number 13, chapter 54, verse 1 is a future prophecy which says, "The hour drew nigh and the moon was rent asunder." This is a future prophecy because when the Quran mentions the hour, it is a reference to the judgment. And the words rent asunder simply mean torn to pieces. You can look up the definition of those words. And so this verse does not say in any way what he is trying to make it look like it says in his video. It does not say anything about splitting anything into two. It does not say anything about duality with the separation of the moon or anything about the moon being equally divided into two parts at all. Nor does it say anything about the earth being split into two parts like he said in his video. But see what he does in his video? He says, apparently the moon has been split into two and will be split into two again. No, the Quran does not say that at all. I don't know where he's getting this from. The Quran does not say the earth will be split into two or has been split into two anywhere. And regarding what the Quran does say, it says the moon was rent asunder. And can anyone scientifically disprove that this will happen? I don't think so. I mean, I understand that religion is a faith-based thing. We believe Islam is the truth. That is our faith. But it's important to understand that a lack of evidence thereof does not disprove something. Moving along, number 14, chapter 10, verse 5. And I think this next one, number 14, is actually so far his weakest argument and most easy to refute. The Quran says the moon is a light, and he's all like, the moon is not a light. Yes, it is. The moon is absolutely a light. The moon receives light from the sun and reflects it back to earth. He even said this in his video. That is absolutely a naturally provided light. It provides light in the nighttime sky and can be used as a guide for travelers. And guidance is light, in a sense. Look up the etymology and definition of the word light. So yes, the moon absolutely is a light by literal definition. I mean, of course the moon is not the kind of light that you have on the ceiling in your household that is turned on by a switch. Of course the moon is not that kind of light. But you see what he is trying to do in his attempt to discredit the Quran? I mean, do you all see what this guy's trying to do? Moving along. Number 15, chapter 55, verse 33 does not indicate in any way that it is impossible to fly to the moon like he is trying to suggest that it says in his video. Chapter 55, verse 33 says, O assembly of jinn and men, if you are able to pass through the regions of the heavens and the earth, then pass through. You cannot pass through but with authority. And with authority means with Allah allowing it to take place. And what this verse of the Quran says is true. It says if you are able to pass through the regions of the heavens and the earth, which like the verse says, is possible with Allah allowing it to happen. But it's important to understand that passing through the regions of the heavens means ascending to much higher places than just penetrating the stratosphere. And passing through the regions of the earth is not something that can be fully achieved until anyone can verify the knowledge of the depths of the ocean or what's really inside the earth. Therefore, this verse of the Quran stands true. Number 16, chapter 33, verse 40, chapter 21, verse 33, and chapter 91, verses 1 to 2. Okay, let's look at these verses. 36:40. Neither is it for the sun to overtake the moon, nor can the night outstrip the day, and all float on in an orbit. 21:33. And he it is who created the night and the day and the sun and the moon, all float in orbits. Chapter 91, verse 1. By the sun and his brightness, 91:2. And the moon when she borrows light from him. Okay, none of these verses say what he is saying they say. None of these verses say anything about the sun moving above a fixated earth or that the sun and moon follow each other. Where does it say that? Where is this guy getting this from? And one of the verses he cited actually is scientifically ahead of its time. Chapter 91, verse 2, which says, and the moon when she borrows light from the sun, which is true. The moon does borrow light from the sun. How did the author of the Quran know that? And furthermore, can anyone substantially say or prove that the sun does not have an orbit of its own? I don't think so. The definition of the word orbit means a sphere of activity, interest, or application. Look at number 17, chapter 36, verse 38 says, and the sun moves on to its destination. That is the ordinance of the mighty, the knower. And then in another translation it says, and the sun runs his course for a period determined for him. That is the decree of him, the exalted in might, the all-knowing. And that sounds scientifically correct to me. I mean, everything in the universe has its final destination. Everything. Like Buddha says, nothing of physical form is permanent. Everything has its final destination. Okay, so I don't know what English translation this guy is going by, but clearly the Quran does not say that the sun has some physical resting place where it goes to and then stops once it gets there in the way that he is trying to claim that it says. And then in the next verse, it mentions the mansions that the moon traverses, which is true. The moon travels all 12 houses every month. The moon goes into a different house approximately every 2 to 3 days. And in the Quran, we have a chapter called the Zodiac, Surah al-Buruj. Number 18, chapter 18, verse 90 says, until when he reached the land of the rising sun, he found it rising on a people to whom we had given no shelter from it. And yes, figuratively speaking, the sun does, by our viewpoint, have a rising place, which is the east. So when this verse of the Quran says he reached the land of the rising sun, it means the eastern lands. And if you study this entire chapter, it becomes clear why he ventured to the eastern lands and what people he found there and why. It's important to understand that the Quran often speaks to us in figurative parables based on our perception of things. Number 19, chapter 18, verse 86 says, until when he reached the setting place of the sun, he found it going down into a black sea, and found by it a people. We said, O Dhul Qarnayn, either punish them or do them a benefit. Okay, so the verse actually says Black Sea, which is a reference to the sea which is actually called the Black Sea, located near the Caucasus Mountains of Asia. It does not say Muddy Spring. So it says that this man in the story named Dhul Qarnayn found the sun setting into the Black Sea, which means that visually from his perspective, he found the sun setting when he arrived at the Black Sea. And there's a significance to the location, which is the Caucasus region. But that's a whole other video. And these verses of the Quran are parables pertaining to the story in this chapter of Dhul Qarnayn. The symbolism in the story is referring to the people from that region, the Caucasus Mountains of Asia. But of course, like most typical anti-Islamics, he's citing verses from the Quran without taking into account the context and relevance of the chapter. Number 20, chapter 25, verse 45 says, seest thou not how thy Lord extends the shade? and if he pleased, he would have made it stationary. Then we have made the sun an indication of it. And the shade referenced here in this verse is allegory for the comfort of Allah, which, in the Quran, is described as a comforting shade from the scorching pain of the unsheltered heat. This is a metaphorical parable. Number 21, chapter 75, verse 9, says the sun and moon are brought together, which is the eclipse. This is absolutely a scriptural allegorical description of a lunar eclipse, of the sun and moon visually coming together in the Quran. It does not mean that they will physically collide. It means coming together by our vision. This is the eclipse. Moving along. Number 22, chapter 67, verse 3 says, "Who created the seven heavens alike? Thou seest no incongruity in the creation of the Beneficent. Then look again. Canst thou see any disorder?" And number 23, chapter 65, verse 12 says, "Allah is he who created the seven heavens, and of the earth the like thereof." Okay, neither of these verses say there are seven earths, like he claimed in his video. It only says there are seven heavens. The earth, the like thereof, does not mean there are seven earths. It just means, like Christ said in the gospel, on earth as it is in heaven, which is not disproved. The kingdom of heaven is within. The seven heavens are the seven levels of consciousness in the mind. The seven levels of the mind's consciousness are delta, alpha, beta, high gamma, and lambda. Number 24, chapter 21, verse 32 says, "And we have made the heaven a guarded canopy, yet they turn away from its signs." It doesn't say anything about a ceiling or having no cracks. Again, where is he getting this from? Number 25, he claimed in his video that chapter 31 verse 30 says that it is a miracle that the sky is held up. And as you can plainly see, this verse doesn't say anything about the sky at all. Number 26, he mentioned chapter 22 verse 65 regarding the sky descending, which is actually scientific. Google it. And which can be interpreted in several different ways. I mean, do you even realize how many different allegorical ways that can be interpreted as? Talking about heaven falling? And the Quran tells you in chapter 3, verse 7, some of the verses of this book are allegorical in nature, metaphorical, symbolic. Number 27, chapter 21, verse 104, which mentions the rolling up of the heavens like a scroll. That's obviously a metaphorical parable. It's allegorical, not a scientific mistake. Number 28, chapter 41, verse 11 says the heavens was a vapor, or in another translation it says the heavens were as smoke, which is a figurative description and does not mean carbon particles like you see from fire. So again, this cannot rightfully, by definition, be called a scientific mistake. Number 29, chapter 2, verse 29 says, "He it is who created for you all that is in the earth, and he directed himself to the heaven. So he made them complete seven heavens, and he is knower of all things." And then chapter 41, verse 9 says, "Say, do you indeed disbelieve in him who created the earth in 2 days? And do you set up equals with him? That is the Lord of the worlds." Verse 10 says, "And he made in it mountains above its surface, and he blessed therein and ordained therein its foods, in 4 days, alike for all seekers." Verse 11 says, "Then he directed himself to the heaven, and it was a vapor. So he said to it and the earth, Come both, willingly or unwillingly. They both said, We come willingly." Verse 12 says, "So he ordained them 7 heavens in 2 days, and revealed in every heaven its affair. And we adorned the lower heaven with lights, and made it to guard. That is the decree of the mighty, the knowing." Now, in paying close attention to these verses, it's obvious to me that it is saying that the heavens existed first, then the earth was created, because it says, "And he blessed therein and ordained therein its foods, in 4 days, alike for all seekers. Then he directed himself to the heaven, and it was a vapor." Which means that the heaven already was, before the earth was created. After he did all these things on the earth, then he directed himself to the heaven, it says. and the heaven was a vapor. And the word vapor can also have various implications. It does not say anywhere that the earth existed before stars. I will debate anyone on that. Number 30, chapter 43, verse 11. And who sends down water from the cloud according to a measure. Then we raise to life thereby a dead land. Even so will you be brought forth, or even so will you be raised from the dead. And number 31, chapter 24, verse 43 says, Seest thou not that Allah drives along the clouds, then gathers them together, then piles them up, so that thou seest the rain coming forth from their midst? And he sends down from the heavens clouds like mountains, wherein is hail, afflicting therewith whom he pleases, and turning it away from whom he pleases. The flash of his lightning almost takes away the sight. This is divine poetry given to mankind. All right, so again, it is plainly obvious to me that nothing in these Quranic verses contradicts the natural evaporation process of vapor from the earth becoming rainwater. Nothing in these Quranic verses contradicts anything regarding what we scientifically know about the rainwater process. Rain does come down from the sky. What are you talking about? I mean, he didn't actually show you in his video what exact part of the verse from the Quran actually contradicts anything regarding the natural process of rainwater, did he? Because there isn't any part of the verse that contradicts science. This is exactly what the Quran is talking about right here. Allah does send rain down from the sky. It's talking about this process right here of natural evaporation. Allah is the driving force behind that natural process that we can all clearly observe. Number 32 and 33, chapter 16, verse 15 says, And he has cast firm mountains in the earth, lest it quake with you, and rivers and roads that you may go aright. Okay, so first of all, mountains actually do hinder earthquakes to a certain degree. Yes, they do. Google it. And in understanding that, well, mountains may not always completely prevent earthquakes, but they do hinder them to some degree. That actually makes sense with what this verse of the Quran is saying. This is exactly what the Quran is saying. And this verse of the Quran does not say that Allah straight up vertically planted any mountains into the earth like he is trying to make it look like it says. At least that's not my interpretation of this verse. All right, number 34, chapter 29, verse 37. But they rejected him. So a severe earthquake overtook them, and they lay prostrate in their abodes. Now, regarding this verse of the Quran he cited, again, there is nothing that is not scientific here. Our belief that earthquakes can be a punishment from Allah is not something disproven. You can't call our belief in what Allah's intention is in causing a specific earthquake a scientific mistake. You don't believe Allah has any intention to cause anything because you don't believe in Allah. And you can't disprove our belief, therefore you cannot rightfully call it a scientific mistake. Look up the English definitions of the word science and the word mistake, and you will see that by definition you cannot call this verse or any of these other verses in the Quran a scientific mistake. The word mistake means to be wrong, and you cannot prove that we are wrong here. You can disagree, but you cannot disprove. All right, number 35. Regarding this particular argument he makes about chapter 2, verse 187 and chapter 17, verse 78, he is trying to argue based on these verses that the Quran lacks the knowledge of the fact that in some places of the world the sun is not seen for long periods of time, such as in Alaska. And in this argument of his, he's actually trying to argue. I mean, it's like almost not worth responding to. It just... I mean, like I said, it's not to diss him or take shots at him, but it just sounds silly. Like he's actually trying to argue, how can you pray according to when the sun goes down if you live where the sun doesn't go down? What if you live in Alaska? How are you supposed to fast Ramadan if you live in Alaska? All right. This is another very weak argument that is just too easy to refute. He fails to realize that the Quran, in this instance, isn't even addressing people who live in other places. Please understand that much of what is in the Quran is pertaining to the time and circumstance of when it is being revealed. For example, the Quran also has a verse that says, "Slay the idolaters wherever you find them." But that does not mean that I am supposed to go out and start killing idol worshippers right now. No. That is something pertaining to a particular situation at that time when the Quran is being revealed. The Quran was revealed over a period of 23 years. Different surahs pertain to different circumstantial times. And in Islam, we have scholars to give us guidance for those who live in places nowhere near Mecca. That's what scholars are for. But I mean, if you atheists don't see it the way us believers see it, then you just won't. There's nothing in these verses that is non-scientific. Nothing. I mean, if you look at the verse further, it shows you that it is talking about a specific people at a specific time. Because it says right there in the verse, Allah knows that you acted unjustly to yourselves. So he turned to you in mercy and removed the burden from you. Number 36, this verse here, chapter 27, verse 18, he got some of the verses wrong in his video. He posted another verse instead, but I figure he meant to refer to this verse. This verse here, chapter 27, verse 18 says, until when they came to the valley of the Naml, a Namlite said, O Naml, enter your houses, lest Solomon and his hosts crush you while they know not. This does not mean that insects spoke as people do. If you look at the footnote by Maulana Muhammad Ali, who is a great translator and great scholar, he explains that the word Naml in the verse actually refers to the Namla, who are a tribe of people. This verse is talking about people, not bugs. Our translator, Maulana Muhammad Ali, says in the footnote that ant is not a proper translation for this word Naml, and that the word Namil means a clever man. And in the footnote, it explains where the tribe got its name from originally. And this is in the Maulana Muhammad Ali English translation of Quran. This is in the footnote on this page regarding this ayat, this verse, and this book is also online. Number 37, chapter 86, verse 6 says, He it is who created of water pouring forth. And verse 7 says, coming from between the back and the ribs. Okay, the Arabic words that the Quran uses in this verse are Khulika min ma'in dafiq, which was translated by Sir Zafrullah Khan as created from a fluid poured forth, and by scholar Maulvi Sher Ali as created from a gushing fluid. Okay, so he is giving a mistranslation in his video. I want to point out that neither the word sperm nor the word semen are in the verses here, in this verse of the Quran, in either of these verses. Those words are not here. However, many things contained in semen originate from places between the backbone and ribs. Yes, such as prostaglandins, zinc, lipids, hormones, enzymes, and amino acids contained in the majority of semen fluid are produced and stored in the seminal vesicles and prostate glands located in an area midway from between the backbone and rib cage from a certain visual perspective. And spiritually, this is referring to sexual energy originating from between the backbone and ribs, where we come from. It's not a scientific mistake. Number 38, chapter 23, verse 14 says, Then we make the life germ a clot. Then we make the clot a lump of flesh. Then we make in the lump of flesh bones. Then we clothe the bones with flesh. Then we cause it to grow into another creation. So blessed be Allah, the best of creators. And this is all true. The life germ does become a clot. The clot then does become a lump of flesh. It is poetically describing the process. The verse does not say that sperm turns into a clot of blood or that we become a clot of blood inside our mothers like he is trying to say it says. It doesn't say that at all. It doesn't say any of that. What it says is, it says, we make the life germ a clot, which is true. First you're a sperm cell, then you're a clot. Look up the word clot. The word blood is not there in the verse. It doesn't say anything about blood. And the definition of the word clot means a thick mass of coagulated liquid, which the life germ does become before it then becomes a lump of flesh. The verse just simply says, we make the life germ a clot. Then we make the clot a lump of flesh. If interpreted correctly, this verse is scientifically true. Yes, there is no mistake here. Number 39, he then claims that this same verse is scientifically incorrect in saying that bones are formed before flesh, when in fact, on the contrary, the verse actually says that flesh comes first. It does not say bones come first. Okay? Because If you go back and look at the verse, it says, then we make the life germ a clot. Then we make the clot a lump of flesh. Then we make in the lump of flesh bones. Then we clothe the bones with flesh, which means adding more flesh to the bones, which came after the first flesh. Look closely at the words of the verse. Okay, it says, we make the life germ a clot, then we make the clot a lump of flesh, then we make in the lump of flesh bones. Okay, so flesh comes first, not bones, according to the Quran. Number 40, this next one is another one that I think is one of his most weakest arguments of the entire 43. And in this one, he answered his own argument for me. He said, quote, when people say they are hiding their thoughts and secrets in their hearts, they don't actually literally mean that the physical secret or thought is literally being contained within the muscle called the heart. Unquote. I don't know if I'm quoting him verbatim, but he said something like that in his video, right? And neither does the Quran mean it literally. The Quran is also speaking figuratively when it says in chapter 11, verse 5, now surely they cover up their breasts to conceal their enmity from him. Now surely when they put their garments as a covering, he knows what they hide and what they make public. Surely he is knower of what is in the breasts. See, this is beautiful allegorical parables of great wisdom. Where would anyone get the idea that the Quran is not also speaking metaphorically when the Quran says that it speaks in parables? In chapter 3, verse 7. Number 41, chapter 25, verse 53 says, and he it is who made the two seas flow freely, the one sweet, very sweet, and the other saltish, bitter. And between the two he has made a barrier and inviolable obstruction. Okay, so this is not talking about the two different kinds of oceans that he is trying to claim it pertains to in his video, because what he's showing appears to be some kind of camera trick, and obviously there were no video hoaxes during the time of 7th century Arabia when the Quran was revealed. So that cancels out any connection between the Quran and some video hoax of two oceans meeting, which is irrelevant though. The point is, this verse is in fact based on truth confirmed by science, as can be seen online. The science of this is actually confirmed, and in more ways than one too. A simple Google search of Quran, two oceans, one salty, one not salty, should bring up a good amount of information on this. It's not a scientific mistake. There are various interpretations regarding the separation of these two kinds of water. There are examples of this that can be seen in nature. It is not talking about whatever fake picture he's talking about. And if you look up the etymology of the word water, water actually means a wave or a current or a frequency. In its original root etymology, it doesn't even mean H2O, going way, way back. I mean, this verse is so deep, talking about the two different kinds of water. I mean, it could be so many different interpretations and meanings you could draw from this. I could do a whole video just on this verse alone. Number 42, chapter 67, verse 3 says, who created the seven heavens alike? Thou seest no incongruity in the creation of the beneficent. Then look again. Canst thou see any disorder? Okay, so this is referring to the initial and natural state of creation. Nature itself does not have any imperfections. Nature has its perfect balance, as anyone who observes nature can plainly see. I mean, it is true that imperfections came with mankind, but see, anyone who is truly wise can see that there is even perfection in imperfection, because duality is universal, as we covered earlier. There needs to be imperfection in order for there to be perfection. You can't have one without the other. And what's interesting is that in his video, he says something like, I don't know if I'm quoting him verbatim, but he says something to the effect of like, the next time someone gets cancer because a natural process went totally wrong that you probably didn't have any influence on, don't blame it on Allah, just blame it on something else, because Allah made everything perfect. Okay, for your information, the truth is, diseases such as cancer are a result of imbalance due to mankind's impure innovations on this planet. But impure eventually returns to pure. Chaos eventually returns to order. Everything is predestined, we believe. The verse says, you will see no incongruity in the creation of the beneficent, which is true. You won't. And last but not least, number 43, chapter 2, verse 2 says, this book, there is no doubt in it, is a guide to those who keep their duty. And for his last point here, point number 43, where he argues that the Quran claiming itself to be a perfect book is a scientific mistake, well, no, it is not a scientific mistake. See, you have to prove that there are scientific mistakes in the Quran, which, as this video shows, I don't think you have. I do not think that you have truly shown that there are any scientific mistakes in the Quran, because there truly aren't any. So yeah, in conclusion, some people out there probably make such anti-Islamic videos because they may be internally upset or hurt, mad for whatever personal reason. See, the thing is, if you lack the spiritual insight to be able to perceive the way in which the Quran is poetically and allegorically speaking, then you won't accurately comprehend its wisdom. And see, what this guy does is he takes certain things that the Quran says at literal face value, and then he goes, see, the Quran says we're made from dust. We're not made from dust. And thus he misses the whole point without the proper application and approach to these verses. And as you can see, he obviously puts a lot of effort into his anti-Islamic videos. Like you can see in his video, he's got a sophisticated camera, background, special effects. I mean, I just did this video with my voiceover still images. But if you look closely at his video, you can see that he's bitter about something. Like, just look very closely. There's one point in his video where he's giggling, laughing about something the Quran says, and you can just tell that deep down inside, there's built-in anger, and he's taking it out on Islam. I don't know what he's angry about. And like I said, it's not to diss him or to put him down, but the poor guy, like you can see, he's obviously bitter about something. It's funny. Also, like I was pointing out earlier, the Quran makes it clear in chapter 7, verse 3, many of the verses of this book are allegorical, symbolic, figurative in nature. Also in the Bible, Jesus makes it clear that he speaks to the people in parables. Okay, so the book even tells you that much of it is figurative, symbolic. And so that's all for now. I just wanted to show that there truly are no scientific mistakes in the Quran. I invite anyone to respectfully respond to this video. I enjoy a good debate. Salam alaikum to all Muslims out there. Peace.